You were going to talk about the new parental controls.
Yes. So, and I have to say, this is a massive. I was actually at one of my kids' schools yesterday where this issue of, I mean, from an educational standpoint, how are we using how AI is going to influence kids, but also from a just, I mean, all we talk about is how social media, how, the algorithm kept pushing kids in certain directions, often radicalizing extremism, etc. So there's a host of tools. I think what struck me the most, that it's very AI-ish in that it's not. So this ChatGPT now has a parental control thing that you can, like a lot of things do. And part of it is typical tools, like you can prevent your kids from using it at certain hours of the day. For some reason, you're allowed to turn off voice mode. I'm not sure what, I guess,
Huh.
because there's that fear that kids will just fall in love with this voice. And people have talked about that fear
Huh.
that it becomes these like long-term social relationships for awkward kids. It also can opt out of model training. I would think that should just be a default, but whatever. And also that it can't create images. That strikes me as an overshoot. I don't think I would do that.
Yeah.
But then the way I understand it working is there is a dynamic aspect. What it has this predictive ability to figure out the age of a user based on the questions they ask, the way they type, etc. Maybe the complete lack of punctuation. Um, so with or without the parental controls, ChatGPT is saying that when it perceives someone to be under 18, it's going to impose soft versions of these parental controls. I got to be honest, I'm not totally sure I think this is either going to work or a great idea. I don't have a strong feeling about that, but first of all, these tools are really easy to access in a million different ways.
Yeah.
And there's free versions. All you need is a Gmail address. But then there's DeepSeek. There's the Chinese models. There's lots of models that are way less controlled than others. One thing that AI is really good at is figuring out how to get around controls.
Yeah.
So I would almost see it as like troubling if my son couldn't figure out how to use AI to
Like,
get
what's wrong
around
with
AI
you?
tools. Yeah. But I also, and I want to be careful about this because I don't want to totally belittle the concerns. Like there are these deep concerns, and apparently I haven't seen, really comprehensive data on this, but apparently when they were testing voice mode, there were people who got lost and, developed these very intense relationships with the voice mode. And that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this all really came about because of the recent suicide of a teen who had been interacting with OpenAI, and that got a lot of press and put a lot of pressure on OpenAI. I think that they sped this up, or implemented the release of this because of these really high profile problems that have happened.
Right. Yes, of course. That being said, the way I deal with this is I talk about AI all the time with my kids, and I often use it with them, and they'll tell me ways they've used it. And I don't, like with YouTube, when you set up, or with other areas where I've set up parental controls, it's almost like I give up. That's just my experience. It's like I don't take it as seriously. I don't worry. I don't have that conversation. And what I'm very mindful of is these kids are going to grow up in an AI centric world. I'm fairly convinced of that.
Mhm.
And they're going to need to figure out a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know that I will ever be able to figure out. And I, the idea of turning off image generation doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's already, it doesn't do pornography. It doesn't, at least the three big models don't. There's plenty that do, but those aren't offering parental controls as far as
No.
I know. So I don't know. This strikes me as theater on the behalf of OpenAI, and also maybe a little bit of theater on behalf, or like a palliative for the parents to be like, okay, we took care of that AI thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I hadn't even seen the part where it wouldn't make images. The part that I saw is where it will notify the parents if the child starts talking about suicide, for example,
Right, I did see that as well. Sorry, I didn't mention that part. There's like a big notification thing. Um,
which is kind
and
of I've heard people be sort of skeptical about that or concerned about that too, because what if the child's problem comes from an abusive parent, for example? So they're
uh,
trying to walk a line. So they're saying, I think they're saying something vague, like your child was talking about suicide, but they're not saying what exactly was said. So they're trying very hard to walk this line.
yeah, it's interesting. Like a lot of companies have established we won't ever look at what you type in policies because the thought is it won't be a useful tool if it's also a surveillance tool.
Yeah.
And if people think like my job get fired or I might not get promoted if they look at my and similarly, I don't want to say ChatGPT should be your therapist, but for kids who don't have access to therapy, I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. These parental controls, they seem reactive, not, and I don't know. Um, I'm a special case. I work in this field now, and so it makes sense for me to be talking about it all the time in my home. And I know not everybody can be as on top of it and spend that much time, and they don't want to fear that their kid's doing bad stuff. But this feels like not the solution somehow.
Yeah. It all just makes me very glad I don't have children.
Yeah, and the sleep probably, I'm guessing, and,
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to worry about. And, I'm thinking, well, in some ways it reminds me of social media because there are predators on social media that are always trying to get your kids too. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like if I had children, I would never let them go online. I'd be so terrified. And I know you can't live that way and you
I
need
gotta say, my son is 14, almost 14, and he strikes me as really smart about this stuff. Honestly, smarter than I am. And he did like you meet like girls if you're a boy, if and that's what you're interested in online, like a friend of a friend. And I went like full investigative journalist on the first few times
Yeah.
because I was like, is this some 55-year-old guy? But he seems really sharp. It seems like I don't know, maybe I'll regret saying this when they play this interview on the evening news, but he seems to understand this better than I do. And as long as we're talking about it, I maybe I should worry more. I do worry. Like I have that knee jerk worry. And I do sometimes go and he look through his YouTube history and stuff. But I
I
it strikes me as a manifestation of a whole bunch of other things. Do you have a relationship with your kids? Are you talking? Blah blah blah. I don't know.
I guess that's
I
the answer really is it's like everything else in their life. Like you have to be on top of it and you have to learn about even if you aren't interested in learning about Instagram or ChatGPT, like as a parent, you probably should learn so you can understand what your kids are doing.
That's what I think. Yeah, I was talking to one of my kids' teachers, and she said, "I'm not going to use it because I don't like it ethically." And I was like, "You should use it. Like your kid, like the kids you're teaching are going to live in this world. You should know it well enough to give them guidance, and maybe also you can use AI to come up with a plan to fight for the ethical things you care about." So
Yeah.